He said his name was Brian, the kind of name you give people when you want to be easy to like and hard to look up. He said it in the doorway of a bar that kept its neon low like a secret. The summer air on Massachusetts Avenue pressed its face against the glass and fogged it with other people's laughter. Inside, the music was a shrug and the voices were louder than their owners meant. He watched me finish my Sprite with that careful, managerial smile men wear when they're about to tidy something that isn't theirs. "You waiting on someone?" he asked. "Kind of," I said, which was a polite way to say I came here to be a person other than the one my parents think I am, and I might change my mind. "Not me, though," he said, amused, appraising. "I like a man who can be honest with disappointment." He didn't touch me, not yet. He kept a respectful foot of air between us and arranged it like furniture. He wore a collared shirt that had the crisp of someone who irons to prove he can. The shade of it was forgettable in a way that took work. His hair was precise. His teeth did the Midwestern thing of looking straight enough to have been prayed for. His eyes were the color of a swimming pool after a storm. "What's your name?" he asked. I lied without meaning to. "Ben," I said, because the night asked for a name that could be shouted without giving too much away. "Ben." He tried it on his mouth. It fit. "I drive out near Carmel. Landscaping, houses that want to look like they mean it. You ever see those places from the highway and wonder who they're trying to impress?" "Everyone," I said. "Everyone," he agreed, as if we were quoting scripture. "You like to swim, Ben?" He let the question sit there like a glass of water next to a pill. "In a lake," I said, and he laughed too kindly. "I've got a pool," he said. "Indoor. Little bit of a party going on. People smarter than me. Want to come? Nothing heavy." He dipped his head, conspirator. "I promise you 10 minutes of not feeling like the worst version of yourself." I could have said no. I could have said I had midterms, a dog, a boyfriend, a Bible study. I could have said I don't get into cars with men whose smiles look like planning. But the part of me that wanted to stop being a ghost found a living person pointing to a door, and I chose the door. 10 minutes, I said. "Then I go." 10 minutes, he echoed, so sweetly it registered as hospitality and not a contract. Outside, his car smelled like rain on plastic and whatever men spray into upholstery when they are trying to rewind their lives to an earlier point. The dashboard was clean in the way kitchens are clean in real estate photos. The glove box bulged as if it had opinions about paper. On the back seat, a coiled length of garden hose lay like a sleeping question. I looked at it. He saw me look. He smiled as if I'd complimented his taste in tools. "For the pool," he said, "vacuum. Water is personality. You have to give it rules." He drove like the lanes were there because he believed in them. Up College, across 38th, onto Keystone, past car lots that shine at midnight like they own the moon. He made talk with the ease of a man who has rehearsed. He liked that I lived alone, didn't like that my job paid in apologies and tips, liked that I read the backs of books, didn't like that I said actually in a sentence. He salted the talk with little compliments about my hands, my voice, the way I didn't flinch at yellow lights, and then he took them back with jokes softer than excuses. He was creating a rhythm. Give, take, give, take. Men like him teach your nervous system to be grateful for quiet. "Where's the party?" I asked when the lights thinned and the night got that suburban echo, the one that makes every bad thought sound like someone else's idea. "Up near Westfield," he said. "Fox Hollow. You'll love the pool room. It's weird." He smiled as if weird were a pet he wanted to show me. "You like weird, Ben?" "I like honest," I said. "Same thing," he murmured. He turned off into a lane that had money at the end of it. Trees choreographed the dark. A house stepped forward from the black like it had been doing this all its life. I am a refuge. I am a stage. Light sat in a few windows as if to say we aren't alone, and people like us don't have to prove it. He parked with the tire's nose against gravel and listened to the car quiet itself, like a parent with a child who can't fall asleep unless someone hums. "Shoes off," he said, inside the door. "The carpet is opinionated." He led me through a foyer that smelled faintly of chlorine and old roses. There were family photographs that didn't look at me. There were library books that had been bought for the way their spines look in pairs. We moved down a hall, across a kitchen that had decided not to age, and into a room where summer lives in winter. The pool. It was the size of a sentence you'd regret, blue deeper than a church. A line of mannequins, torso mannequins, stood against the far wall with the patience of ushers. Their blankness made me swallow a small mouthful of air. He saw the swallow and clapped his hands once like a host. "I told you," he said. "Weird." He stepped toward one mannequin and straightened its shoulder as if correcting posture. "Estate sale. Can't tell if I hate them or if they're the only people who understand me." "Where's the party?" I asked. "Ended," he said. "Or maybe you're early. Depends on if you like quiet." He went to the pool's edge and crouched to adjust the skimmer. The blue shed a smaller bluer on his face. "I thought you said—" "I say a lot," he said without turning. "People don't listen. That's what makes me valuable." "Valuable," I said to keep my mouth from going on strike. "In the world of people who pretend," he said. Then lighter. "Want a tour?" The tour was the pool room until it wasn't. It was the way his hand touched the hose like a man touches an instrument he plays well. It was the filter he flicked with his knuckle. It was the towel folded along the edge with an order that was careful and not kind. He tossed me another towel as if we were about to be boys. "You swim," he said. "I'll watch." "I said 10 minutes, I reminded, a child with a clock hidden in his chest. 10, he said. 9 now. He looked at my shirt. "You can keep it on." He looked at my throat. "Or not." I didn't swim. I stood at the edge and watched the water pretend to forget every version of me I'd ever brought to it. He waited out my refusal with admirable patience. Then he came to stand in my space and did that thing with his voice where it floats just above the register that kids and dogs listen to. "You know what I like, Ben?" "No," I said. "Control," he said. "Simple. No games. A body that obeys." He lifted the hose and draped its coil across his arm the way a man might hold a snake he claims is tame. "Some guys like to go under while someone smart watches. Breath play," he said, clinical, like he was a nurse. "You know it?" "I know it's not my thing," I said. "You don't know that yet," he said. "You know a lot, but you don't know that." He tilted his head. "You want me to show you how safe it can be?" "No," I said again. The word had gotten bigger while we were in that room. It made a small echo. One of the mannequins looked over my shoulder as if embarrassed for me. "Safe," he repeated, amused by my insistence on vocabulary. "You think I'd hurt you?" He kept his mouth kind while his eyes did math. "I collect people, not injuries." "Who are you collecting them for?" I asked. "For later," he said, "for when the house is too quiet, for when I want to remember I can still make a room pay attention." He let that sit between us like steam. "Come on," he said. "Softer. You said 10 minutes. I'm spending them well." He brought the hose close enough that I could hear myself in it. He showed me how a thumb over the end changes a flow. He stood behind me and put his fingers on my sternum the way you touch a piano when you don't intend to play. "Lie back," he murmured. "Float. I'll keep you." My body made its own agreement in a voice I didn't like. I felt the night narrowing. A pool, a blue, a man, a hose, a throat. I lay back because some part of me wanted to be a person who could stand at the edge of a bad idea and not fall. The water was the temperature of someone else's bath. The ceiling tiles looked like a field seen from a plane. The hose came near my mouth. He held me under for a heartbeat. He let go. He said, "See?" I tried to nod in a medium I was not built for. I came up. He smiled. The mannequins smiled with him in their own way. Not at all, which is sometimes worse. "Again," he said. "This time longer." "No," I said, breathing laughter into the word to make it sound less like what it was. "Ben," he warned, which is a thing only teachers and liars get to say. "No," I said, and stood. He studied me as if deciding which shelf I belonged on. The hose dripped against his wrist. The towel knew what it was like to be wrung. He looked at the clock mounted above the door and smiled. "Time," he announced. "You have 5 minutes left to keep your promise." "Then I'm gone," I said. "Then you're something," he corrected, and it wasn't clear if that was a threat or a compliment. The door out of the pool room opened into a hall that had opinions. He walked ahead of me, letting me see the back of him. Careful, Jim Strong, the posture of someone who thinks the world owes him tolerance. He took us past a bedroom where the bed was made in a way that told on the person who made it. He moved toward the stairs to the lower level, and I stopped. "Where are we going?" Tour, he said. Storage. You'll love the storage. I'm good, I said, which is how Midwesterners say I'll die before I do that. He turned, still smiling. You keep telling me you're good, he said. You're not. You're young. That's a different thing. I'm leaving, I said, and the sentence felt like a glass I wasn't sure I could lift without breaking. The smile stayed. He set the hose down gently. At the front door, he gestured to my shoes on the mat. I bent to put them on. He bent too, like a gentleman, like a valet, like a man who had practiced making wanting to help look like a personality. His shoulder brushed mine. He slipped something around my wrist with the care of a jeweler. Soft, flat, abrasive, nylon, a loop with a one-way appetite. I jerked. Animal, ridiculous. He made a soothing sound. My chest tried to put my heart in a pocket. He lifted both hands again to show me empty, but he had only needed the 1 second. The loop's tongue had already passed the tooth. The ratchet was a tiny god that asks you to bow. He tightened it a half-inch with 2 fingers and said, shh, the way mothers say it to colicky children, and men say it to colicky women, and some men say it to people who will never see their mothers again. No, I said. Not a scream, not a prayer, a policy. He put one hand on the back of my neck and opened the door. The night was a generous witness. The cicadas kept minutes. The trees played the part of a choir. He steered me across the threshold like a host escorting a difficult guest back to the valet stand. Out here, I said. Neighbors. Mind their business, he said. The gravel offered its small applause to our steps. The car sat with its nose pointed toward a darkness that had earned its reputation. He opened the rear door and did that little bow again, an obscene imitation of chivalry. Sit, he said softly, or make me be someone I don't want to be. What is that? I asked, stalling. Impolite, he said. I sat. He shut the door with a neat, expensive sound. He got in front and did not start the engine. The house behind us breathed like a thing that has practiced this sigh. He watched me in the rear view with the patience of a surgeon. The nylon made a gentle suggestion at my wrist. It did not hurt. It existed. It told me what was about to. I like tidy, he said, conversational. You get to decide how messy this gets. Let me go, I said. You have a house. You have a life. You have a pool full of things that think they love you. Let me be the error that makes your story more interesting. Don't make me a chapter. He admired the argument the way florists admire weeds. You don't get to be a chapter, he said. You get to be a detail. Someone is waiting for me, I lied. I told them where I was going. You did not, he said, fond, like a math teacher who's found your mistake and can't wait to show you how long you've been wrong. You told no one. That's why men like me still exist. Men like you, I repeated, like a parrot taught to say poison. Good men, he said. Efficient men. Men who can hold still. He started the car. The headlights made the lane into a ribbon. He drove the opposite direction from the way we'd come in. A second drive, a smaller house that lived behind the first, a tree line with opinions, a corral of night. Where are we going? I asked. Closer, he said. To what? To the part of you that listens, he said. I looked at the door handle. Child locks. An adult man in an adult car, and I might as well have been a toddler in a high chair. I tried to wedge one thumbnail under the nylon's tab. The loop whispered no politely. I considered my belt, metal, my teeth, useless, my words, charged but insufficient. I considered the horn. I shifted so my knee could reach, and then he braked gently as if to adjust a mirror. The knee hit only air. Don't, he said, still mild. You'll embarrass both of us. Brian, I said, and the claiming of his fake name tasted like biting tinfoil. Why me? He thought about giving me something generous. He failed. Because you said 10 minutes, he said. I love a boy who thinks time keeps him safe. I'm not a boy, I said, even as my voice made a liar out of me. I'll teach you, he said. He parked under a stand of maples that made a privacy screen out of old gossip. He shut off the lights. The world did not end. He turned in his seat and looked at me as if I were a tool he hoped would surprise him with a second function. He reached back over the seat and touched my bound wrist with 2 fingers, not cruelly, like a piano teacher. Other hand, he said. No, I said, and the oldest trick in the book, I gave it to him before he could force the giving. Compliance buys seconds. Seconds are a currency. The second loop arrived. This one he tightened with a small sigh that suggested I had added to his workload by being alive. He sat and breathed. Somewhere in the house, a pump shivered, the pool keeping itself in motion for company that wasn't real. He took out a length of clothesline from the glove box with the casualness of a man finding pens and wrapped my ankles as if measuring for shoes. "You can stop," I said. He smiled at the windshield. It reflected us both in a bad painting. "You can wake up," he said. "Neither seems likely." "Please," I said, and the word, oiled by a lifetime of being the one to soften edges, came out prettier than it deserved. He touched the dashboard lovingly, as if the car had been his childhood horse. "I didn't do this for years," he said. "You try to be better, the world bores you. You teach yourself what the old thrills look like if you put a halo over them. You pretend you don't see the hose in the back seat. I go to the bar and promise myself I'm only going to drink a club soda and tell a boy he deserves a good life. Then the boy is you." He shrugged. "Don't be too honored. It's not personal. It's math." He got out. He opened my door. The cicadas got louder, like they approved of witnessing. He waited while I maneuvered my bound ankles to the edge and swung them out. He offered an arm. I took it. I will hate that for a long time. "Down," he said, gesturing to the side yard, to the place where night makes bargains. "We'll talk in the dark where the house can't eavesdrop." "I'm loud," I said. "I'll wake your trees." "No one knows these trees," he said. "They hold their leaves the way I hold my life." He walked me slowly so I would not fall and turn him into a certain type of man too quickly. We went to the back of the property where the grass forgets its assignment. The ground tilted like a tongue. He sat me against a fence post and squatted in front of me, knee to knee, like a man repairing a bicycle in his garage. "You're not going to die," he said pleasantly. "Good," I said, truer than I intended. "You might want to," he added, as if marking a date on a calendar. "No," I said, and I meant it so much that the air had to make room for the sentence. He put his palm under my jaw, tilted my face up to the part of the sky that holds the milky light from cities. I can still feel the weight he used. It was careful and it was practiced, and it was not what a stranger's hand should be allowed to do under anyone's jaw without a ceremony and a law. "Brian," I said, "I'm telling you the truth. I told someone where I was going." "You told me," he said. "That's enough." "I told someone who isn't you." I met his eyes and tried to make mine look like a room he would rather not enter. "A bartender," I lied. "A guy at the door. A friend who never misses a call. A cab driver who wrote down your plates because I made him curious." I inhaled. "And I have asthma," I lied again. "If you put anything near my face, I will make a noise that will bring birds down." He smiled. "Asthma," he said, not buying and not needing to. "Let me keep my face," I said, and part of me was praying, and part of me had just discovered the one sentence that might make an efficient man hesitate. "Whatever you're doing, don't do it to my face." He rocked back on his heels and considered the night. "You can have your face," he said, and I learned then that we sometimes live because we ask for the right small thing. He stood. He looked toward the house. He listened to the pool's little teeth. He put his hands on his hips like a man admiring a job done efficiently. He took a step back. "Look at me," I said, because something in me believed eye contact could humanize a predator enough to slow him. He did. For the first time, the friendliness dropped off his bones. His face rearranged itself to let purpose show through. He was ordinary inside, which was worse than if he'd been monstrous. "Don't go anywhere," he said, and began to turn. I did the ugliest thing a person can do for a good reason. I stopped. He knelt. He rechecked knots the way a sailor might if every knot were a morality tale. He made a little approving sound. "You're a handful," he said. "I like you." Men like him don't mean like when they say like. They mean almost interesting enough to keep conscious for one more minute. "Tell me your real name," I said. He tilted his head. "What do you think it is?" "Not Brian," I said. He grinned. "Good boy," he said, and behind the praise was a contempt I could smell. "You don't get it tonight." "I'll make one up," I said, "and I promise it'll be insulting." "Boys like you," he said, "learn the wrong lessons." He stood again, stretched, as if his own body had been working for me and deserved kindness, and in the moment he looked at the sky like he was trying to find Orion's belt in the light pollution, I rolled. A roll is seldom heroic. It's awkward. It makes you feel like laundry. It also turns a body 90 degrees relative to a hand that expects it to be compliant. He moved to correct. I moved to be inconvenient. My shoulder hit his shin. His shin said hey to his mouth. He stumbled a half step, and for the first time all night, he swore without the Midwestern varnish. I drew my knees up under me, the way a child is taught to stand without using hands. The rope obliged in the laziest, hateful way. I came to 1 foot. He reached. I fell forward into him, the way you do when you're drowning, and the person on the dock is the only land. We went down together, me on top for a single mean second. I used it. I brought my cuffed hands like a hammer down on the bridge of his nose. Not a break, not the big TV noise, a small sound, a hurt. The kind that is more insult than injury. He yelled my fake name so angrily, he made it sound like my real one, and pushed me off with a calm rage, like a coach embarrassed by his own team. I rolled again and got my shoulders under me. I kicked with both feet, a clumsy mule thing taught by panic. My heel found his wrist. The knife he'd been surprised to find himself holding skittered away into the dark with a little cricket sound as it kissed a stone. I will never know when he took it out, pocket, ankle, glove box, only that this was the first moment I admitted it had been part of his plan since the first sentence he said to me. He went for it. I went for the noise. There is a sound a person can make that invites the night to have an opinion. I made it. The cicadas went off key. The maples lifted their hands like choir ladies. The house considered shame for perhaps the first time. And then, because the world has a sense of timing that humiliates us when we try to write it, headlights bled through the trees, slow, exploratory, like a neighbor who can't sleep and is driving to see if guilt makes a noise. "Help," I said, too loud to be dignified. "Hey," he froze. That's the thing about men who need control. They cannot allocate any to coincidence. He looked toward the light with an expression I have not stopped praying for since: confusion. He isn't used to being interrupted by other people's narratives. He likes a room with one plot. "Shut up," he said softly, and advanced, and in advancing, he stepped on the clothesline. His weight took from it the slack it needed to give. He pitched a little, his dignity made mortal by a trip. He caught himself with the hand that wasn't injured. He did not fall. He did not have to, for me to win a second. The lights grew. A car door thunked at the bottom of the lane. A man called a name that was not mine, not his, not anyone's. "Honey?" And that ridiculous, miraculous word moved across the yard like a dog who thinks you've come home. A woman's voice answered. "Hold on," I thought I heard. And then, "Do you smell chlorine?" Which is the honest, busiest body sentence I've ever been saved by. He looked at me in a fast, small panic. He looked at the knife like a recalcitrant student. He looked at the house the way boys look at their mothers when secrets fail. Then he did what tidy men do when the spreadsheet gets messy. He chose the column with the least math. He ran. Not a movie run. A good, quiet, functional run that takes a man from a problem to the part of the house where he knows where all the doors go. He disappeared as if hired to. The night shuddered because I made it and because it wanted to. The rope on my ankles remembered how to behave and misbehaved. I hopped. I fell. I crawled the last yards like a bad prayer. I put my shoulder against a maple, stood, and then shouted. Help again, and again, and again. And the again is what saved me, because people believe in repetition more than single events. The couple from the car, late 30s, the easy tired of people who've been up too long, came into the mouth of the yard with a flashlight that behaved like a saint. It found me tied. It found my face intact. It found my hands proudly stupid with nylon. Are you okay? The woman asked, because women always ask that while in motioning toward fixing what made the question necessary. No, I said, and laughed in a way that made me look like the person your aunt tells you not to bring home. The man said, what happened, and hey at the same time. He put himself between me and the house on a reflex. He'll explain to himself later in a sentence that uses the word man twice. He took out his phone. He said a number and the word hurry. The woman cut the line at my ankles with a cheap little pair of garden shears she must have had in her car because she likes plants. The hose lay where it fell like a snake, dead of embarrassment. Don't move, she said. And then, because she was a person who has been told to be smaller 100 times and has unlearned it. Screw that. Come with me. She tucked herself under my arm and we walked together toward the lane while her husband said our location out loud like a magic spell. Behind us, the house switched off a light in the pool room with an audible sigh. Another window went black. He was inside, being tidy. He would be tidy for years. He would do this enough times to make the ground disrespect Bone. He would become a rumor, and then a headline, and then a historical fact that tours would take. But right then, he was 2 rooms away, counting minutes and deciding where to put away the part of himself that hunted. The first cruiser came with theater and glory. The second came with the shy shudder of men who know what Indiana holds when it's tired of artifice. An officer wrapped a blanket around me because paperwork requires blankets. Another cut the nylon on my wrists with a gesture that had the anger of a father he maybe wished he could be. I told the story in the foyer so the house would have to hear me. I said hose and mannequins and indoor pool and Brian and Fox Hollow, and I said 10 minutes, and the detective looked suddenly like he wanted to bite the edge of a door. "You did good," he said. "You did enough." They searched while I answered what I could. The chlorine tried to pretend it wasn't guilty. The mannequins were interviewed by light and had nothing to say. A door to a lower space was locked with a lock that had learned what the word later means in a policeman's mouth. The officers logged what they could without a warrant. They walked the yard and its little opinions. They promised me nouns would come tomorrow. For tonight, they would settle for verbs: call, stay, breathe. I went home in the back of a car that did not treat me like a problem. I sat under a shower like it could give me a certificate. I made the phone call to the friend who would have found a way to blame me if he were the old version of himself. He didn't. He said, "Jesus and I'm here," and that is the sentence people should be trained to say in school. In the morning, I looked at my wrists, and the nylon had left polite, precise brackets as if trying to quote me for later use. The city learned slowly. The county learned faster. The news learned just enough to speculate tastefully. People who had always known about the guy with the mannequins said it out loud. The detectives said alias and Brian Smart with a disgust that did not lessen with repetition. The neighbor with the flashlight and the wife with the shears gave their statements and refused TV on principle. A bartender remembered a man with neat hair who didn't finish his club soda. A boy who had once climbed into a stranger's car the same night I did returned to the bar 2 weeks later with a voice that had learned the grammar of bad dreams and used it respectfully in sentences. I was not the end of him. I wish I could give you that bow on the package. The ending belongs to a man in a park in Ontario, to a sandwich bag with a note, to bones sifted from the grief of ground that was never asked, to a property that will be called haunted by people who didn't have to learn a better vocabulary. They will say Fox Hollow Farm like it's folklore, when it's just a place where a polite state let itself be ugly and then paid the bill late. I give you this instead. I lived because I made noise twice. I lived because I asked for my face. I lived because a woman who keeps shears in her car believes that everything, plants, people, nights, can be tended. I lived because a man said honey into the dark and believed his own voice would be enough to change the next 5 minutes. I lived because he thought he had time to tidy. He didn't. If you're asking what I learned, it isn't romantic. I learned to count exits when I come in. I learned to be rude before I am sorry. I learned that no is a policy, not a mood. I learned that the people who say 10 minutes want your whole life and they want you to keep it clean while you hand it over. When I pass that stretch of road now, I roll my window down and let the air come in like it knows something I should. There is a sign you can't see unless you've been where I've been. You owe no one neatness. How am I doing now? Well, I keep a pair of trauma shears in my glove box. I tell the door guy where I'm going and who I'm with, and I leave when the house smells like chlorine and apologies. Killer reveal: Herbert Baumeister, a.k.a. Brian Smart, Fox Hollow Farm. Herb Baumeister, 1947 to 1996, was an Indianapolis area businessman and family man who operated under the alias Brian Smart. In the early mid-1990s, he lured men, often from bars along Indianapolis's LGBTQ+ corridor, to his Westfield estate, Fox Hollow Farm, where he engaged in erotic asphyxiation and is suspected of murdering at least 11 to 25 victims. In 1996, investigators searching the property uncovered thousands of bone fragments representing at least 11 men scattered around the wooded yard and creek bed. Additional remains were found nearby. Before he could be arrested, Baumeister fled to Ontario, Canada, where he died by suicide in July 1996, leaving a note that referenced marital and business troubles but offered no confession. He was never tried. Some investigators have debated possible links between Baumeister and unsolved homicides along Indiana-Ohio corridors in the 1980s and 90s, but the Fox Hollow Farm remains are the core of his legacy, an emblem of predation hidden behind suburban respectability.